that we're going to have today. We are UF MAMO, we're a Foreign Affairs Association, and we're very glad to collaborate today with Amnesty International and Untold Stories. And Edward here is going to be taking over, and he's going to be telling us more about who's going to be the speakers today. Thank you for coming, and I hope you like this lecture.
Hi everybody, my name is Eduardo Jacobelli and I am chairman of the Amnesty International Board here in Malmö. And welcome to today's lecture regarding an issue that is, to say the least, problematic in Ethiopia. A country in which, during the latest years, has had members and leaders of opposition parties, as well as protesters, extrajudicially executed. A country in which general elections took place in May, against a backdrop of restrictions on civil society, the media, the political opposition, and this was including the excessive use of force against peaceful demonstrators, the disruption of opposition campaigns, and the harassment of election observers from the opposition. And lastly, a country where the police and the military conducted mass arrests of protesters, journalists, and opposition party members as part of a crackdown on the protests in the Oromo region. Most of the suppression I'm talking about is justified from something named the Anti-Terrorist Protection Law, or the ATP. And the ATP was used in the run-up to the general elections to suppress freedom of expression through the continued detention of journalists and protracted trials, where during last year's reports came that through the ATP at least 17 journalists were arrested and charged. Many also fled the country due to intimidation, harassment, and politically motivated criminal charges. We have ourselves lifted some cases. One is regarding Haptan Minale, editor-in-chief of the Kidami newspaper. He was arrested on the 9th of July last year at his house and released on the 26th of July without charge. One other was regarding the Zone 9 bloggers group, who on the 16th of October last year were freed from terrorist charges after spending over 500 days in pre-trial detention. And on the 22nd of October, the High Court convicted and sentenced in his absence Gizav Taye, manager of the Demos Entertainment and Press, to 18 years imprisonment for terrorism. As you may hear, and perhaps already know, the situation is everything but simple. A corrupt regime silencing the words of the only one who dares to challenge the authoritarian rule is everything but that. But how can you turn it around and unsilence the silenced? And how can you give a voice to those who are muted? And this is what Melody Sundberg currently is doing. She is the project manager and founder of Untold Stories and began her advocacy for press freedom in Ethiopia after reading the book 438 Days. Since then, she has been a passionate promoter of the free world, and the aim of Untold Stories is not only to spread awareness and knowledge about human rights violations, and thereby giving people cause to care, but just as importantly, it is to support the struggles of the repressed. The hope is to give a voice to the voiceless and empower the powerless, to make sure they will know who they are and that their stories will be told. So therefore, I would like to welcome Melody to the stage and hope she can give us all a better perspective on the situation and on her activism. Thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo. Yes, it sounds like this is working. Great to see you here this evening. A little over a year ago, I was listening to radio at home in my living room in Örebro. And I had this radio app, you know, where we have radio documentaries, and I was trying to find something to listen to. And that is when a name suddenly captured my eye. It was the name of Martin Schibbye, who was a Swedish journalist, and he was jailed in Ethiopia a few years ago. He was jailed in a prison called Maekelawi, and this is a prison where people are interrogated, and then they are moved to other prisons after they have been there. This is a place that is notoriously known for keeping innocents. It is opposition politicians, journalists, protesters, or people who are just like you and me, students, bloggers, social media users. But as soon as they end up in this prison, they are called terrorists. And it was one early morning when Martin and Johan were in their cell in Makilawi. And I would like to try to get a picture of this place. Outside of their cell, there's a courtyard. And the ground is made of sand and dust. And around it there are buildings. There are old buildings that are made of concrete and stone. And a friend of me described this place, that when you are outside on this courtyard, you're often not alone, because prisoners are sometimes allowed to be there to get a few minutes of sunlight. But most people you see out here are walking toward the interrogation rooms that are in these buildings together with cells. At this cold early morning, Martin and Johan saw a young man walking across this courtyard. It looked as if he had trouble to see the sunlight, and he had, because he was jailed in a pitch-dark cell. They could also see that he was holding his hand on his stomach, just as if he was in pain. And he was, because he was regularly being tortured during the interrogations. They could also see that his wrist was injured, and the reason for that was that he was jailed in a cell that is 1 by 1.5 meters wide. Listen to that, 1 meter, 1.5 meters wide, where he could not stand, where he could barely sit. And now this young man was once again walking across the courtyard toward the interrogation rooms. A friend of mine described these interrogation rooms because he had been there too. And he said that the moment you walk into this room, it feels just as you step into another planet. Because you can really feel that humanity does not exist here anymore. It is so cold, it's so dark, even though it is in the middle of the day, so dirty. And you can feel that in here, people have been tortured, beaten, even killed. Why was this young man imprisoned in such a horrible place? What is the reason that the Ethiopian government jailed people in such horrific places that don't even have words? What was his crime? He had written poetry. Yes, you heard it right. He had written poetry about human rights, because this young man is part of his Oromo, which is an ethnic group in Ethiopia. And they are heavily oppressed by the Ethiopian government. And he had written poetry that was criticizing the Ethiopian government's abuses against human rights. And he had worked for their culture, to support their culture, and for this he was imprisoned and tortured on this place. In November 2015, I was lucky to meet this man who managed to survive in jail. And I met him in Stockholm, and he shared his story with me in person. And today, he is here to share his story with you. Welcome, Caalaa.
Hello, everyone. Thank you to be here and to be interested to listen to what I'm going to tell you. And thank you for those who have organized this wonderful event. And I'm really privileged to be here and share my story with you. But Melody has already said a lot of things. I want to start with a question. How many of you have been arrested or experienced the life of prison. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wow. Okay. So you know very well. I want to start with reading a poetry because that was the reason that took me to jail. So the title of the poem is Do I Sleep? How could I sleep? How could my left rib get in bed when my right rib is sick? While the screams of thousands echo in my ear? When my mind is set to restore the bad memories of the savages? When I recall the atrocity of one human being on another? When I'm dreaming life in days in life? When my body is fainted and seems outcasted? But I'm still in custody of humiliation? Where we all are in detention, how do you ask me, do I sleep? How could I really sleep? With good spirits of where which dream, while I'm disturbed from the left and the right, how can I go to my bed while many are shackled and tortured, shouting and begging to survive? While I'm inhumanly beaten, how do I sleep while hundreds are burned alive? How could I get rest in despair of mentality, though I am hearing the whispering and the screaming of those who are endangered? How, when, and where do I sleep? Maybe I can borrow one's peace of mind just for one day. To taste what peace of mind feels like, can ask the world who are in the peace of mind and deeply sleep. Now I cannot do this, I'm not in the dark mood, I'm a symbol of thousands, a symbol of millions, cannot sleep, but hoping to rest one day. Yes, one day in the future. Yes, maybe tomorrow when I'm heard, when we are respected, when we are freed and allowed to live in peace, then I will get a good sleep. Today, I will not sleep. This is to the memory of the burned alive and the gunned down of precious lives everywhere in the world. Thank you. So, I don't know from which point I will start, but it's better if I start from my teenager when I was arrested for the first time. My dispute with the regime, or with this Ethiopian regime, was almost before 12 years ago. But before that, I want to introduce you what I'm going to tell you, because mostly I will just say that word, or I'm telling you the reason why I was arrested is being an Oromo. What's Oromo? And why, if you are Oromo, then be targeted. Oromo is one of an ethnic group, and the largest ethnic group in the Ethiopia, the wider in the Horn of Africa. More than 45 million only in Ethiopia. But these majority people have been oppressed, suppressed, and marginalized. Still, they are in this situation. Oromo, the Oromos speak Afan Oromo. That is the language of Oromo. But this language has been passed from generation to generation. That it has been banned from being written, and that the people were not allowed to speak in the city. So, unfortunately, in the fall of, in 1991, when the Derg regime fell, the transitional government was established, and in that transitional government, one of the Oromo Liberation Front was the part of transitional government, and they agreed to introduce, and Afan Oromo has got the opportunity to be written, and we have got the opportunity to attend school in our language, that's Afan Oromo. Then, since I was a child, like 6 or 7, I started writing poetry. I didn't know what was, like, I wrote what I feel, and that feeling was what I have experienced, and I was observing in the society, the culture, the language, the history, and whatever other things. But in 2004, I was studying high school, like grade 10, and I was a leader of mini media as well as student council in the high school. I used to read poetry every morning. But that was not appreciated by the securities and by the support of the regime of Ethiopia, especially because in Ethiopia you are not free totally. You have to be a member of the Ethiopian regime, or TPLF, the Tigrayan People Liberation Front, which is representing only the single ethnic group, the most minor group. So you have to be a member of them unless you are not allowed to do or to be free. So I was arrested for the first time in 2004. I was like 16 years old. Then I was arrested in a very confined and a very filthy cell in the border of Ethiopia and Kenya, that is southern of Ethiopia. Then they took me to the other region, that is region 5. Ethiopia is practically structured as a federal, which there are 9 states. From these 9 states, state 5 and the state 4 is Oromia, which is the largest state in Ethiopia, and the second one is Ogaden or Somalia. So they took me there, and I was tortured, interrogated. The torture was mentally and physically. They wanted me to be crazy or to be like dehumanizing me, insulting me. So they wanted me to confess, which I didn't know. Like, tell us everywhere when I was arrested. The question came from the interrogators was, tell us. But I don't know what I would tell them. So that was the first time, and it was prolonged for almost 6 months. Then finally I was released on bail bond of 10,000 Ethiopian birr. And again, I joined Adama University in 2008. Then I became a very active student in the activities that we have been engaged in university, like become a member of student council, volunteer, and the Oromo culture, history, and language preservation. So I became a representative of volunteer. These clubs were very organized and integrated to each other, supporting to each other, doing so positive things in the university and outside of universities. So we used to help orphans, disabled people, elders. Sometimes we round all over the dormitories and collect money clothes, and then we go to the street, and those who are begging and those who live in the street. Then we used to help them. And the Oromo culture, language, and history preservation was promoting Afan Oromo language, literature, and other related things. I was a secretary, as a general secretary of this forum, and I used to write poetry and read to the students. Whether there is any events, or by organizing a literary society events or poetry festival, but that was not appreciated by the Ethiopian security. So I was arrested for the first time in the university 2009. Then they wanted me to stop. I refused to do that. Then again, after I was released, in 2010, I published my first poetry book, and that was sent me again to jail. The poetry book I wrote was, it was just normal book, and it was contained more than 47 collection of poems. Then they said that this book inciting the Oromo students to against the government, or it against or oppose the Ethiopian regime. Then I was sent to jail again. I was interrogated, tortured, and finally they said that you have to, we are going to send you to the place where there is jurisdiction. I mean, because they said that we don't have a jurisdiction to see your case, so they sent me to the zone. It was from Bishoftu, that is, Bishoftu is, which 45 kilometers to southeastern Addis Ababa, the capital city. Then again, they interrogated me. They said that I have to explain myself and about my book. Then I told them. Then kind of they, by only looking the topic or the title of the poetry, what is this, what is this, why you write about the stone, why you write about something, something. If you are a poet or if you write something, it is not something that you can explain for all. It's up to the reader to interpret, to understand. And sometimes what you write is very personal or to the wider audience or public. I write poetry in 3 times. Like, sometimes I write for myself, my personal or my thinking, or maybe the others cannot care or cannot understand that. Sometimes I write for the public, and sometimes the poem I write can be understood by poets or those who are in linguistics. So then again I was released on bail. Generally I was arrested before I was sent to Malawi 5 times in different times and in different places. But finally in 2011 I was arrested in Adama, and they said that we are going to send you to Malawi. As Melody has explained, Malawi is a very dangerous place. It is a place where people are kept, get killed, maybe become crazy or mentally disordered. And it is the place where the TPLF or Ethiopian regions went to punish or went to dehumanize or do whatever they like. So I was there, and for the first 8 days, I was kept in totally, well, Malawi has different sections or phases, like the first phase, the second phase, the third phase, and the fourth phase. The first phase is the office, and where there are some cafeterias that be used by the officials. And the second phase is Caalaa Bait, or wooden house. It was where Martin and Johan were kept. In front of the Caalaa Bait, or wooden house, there is courtyard, and it is a place where we were given a time to get sunlight for 10 minutes in a week. The surface is totally dark room and underground. So most of politicians, activists, writers, journalists, and others, descendants, were kept there and tortured there. And the fourth phase, or the fourth section, is torture area. It's kind of torture rooms, and where they used to waterboarding and for everything. And the last phase, or the last section, called Sheraton. Sheraton is considered to be a better place, which was named sarcastically after a well-known Sheraton Ethiopia. So my first, like, almost more than 2 months, I was kept in this dark area, underground, like cell number 8, cell number 7, and cell number 3. Cell number 8 has also division, 8.1, 8.2, 8.1a, 8.1b, 8.13, and 8.14. It is very narrow, as she explained. It's kind of 1 by 1.5 meter. Assume that. So I was put there after my hands and feet shackled or handcuffed. Even I cannot stretch out my legs. I cannot sleep. And it was totally not allowed for us to go out or to have the opportunity even to go to bathroom or toilet. No food. The food they gave us was like very dried bread and the tea. The tea by itself was like very cold water. So, but only in the night we were taken from that room to the interrogation room. When they came to me, I was just blindfolded and dragged to the interrogation room. I couldn't see who is interrogating me, but what I remember is sometimes there are 10 people or 5 people. They don't have humanity. They just, if someone hit me from the back, someone hit from in front of me. And sometimes they hung me up downside, and it was, the imprisoned or the prison person, the prisoner doesn't have any rights. We were deprived totally the fundamental and the basic rights. We don't have a right to ask. We don't have a right to speak. in the position to help you. Rather, they want to hear you or advise you to confess or to tell to the interrogators as you are a criminal. But they said that they were there in order to help us. I was very sick during that time, but I was denied to get any treatment. My abdomen and my back was really very sick, and I had a problem to see, and because my eyes were not in good, because due to lack of sunlight and very dark, it was totally a problem for us and for me too. But finally, when they said that we are going to transfer you to Sheraton, everyone in dark room or in Caalaa Hayiluu, everyone desires or wants to go to Sheraton. It's kind of as you are freed or as you get freedom. Because when we were in Caalaa Hayiluu or in dark room, the only time we get sunlight is when we are allowed to go to the courtyard in front of Martin and Johan. It was the time that I saw Martin and Johan. But seeing them create something hope in my mind. They were very courageous, and they showed us their bright face, like exchanging moral. Because you can imagine that though they were in the same situation with us, but they had courage and they were writing something in their cell. Their cell was not closed, it was open, and you can see them what they are doing in their cell. Finally, I was transferred to Sheraton, and I stayed there maybe about a month. Sheraton was something different from this Caalaa Hayiluu or dark cell and wooden cell. The difference between Sheraton and the other cell is in Sheraton has a place where you can go around and the sunlight came to your cell and you can move around there, you can play, you can talk with people, you can discuss. But the interrogation was not stopped, but is something like reduced from the former, because now you are already finishing and you have two alternatives or two options. The first option is get charged or transferred to Caalaa, where you are going to be sentenced or whatever they want to take. And the second option is maybe they can release on bail bond or just order you go to your home without nothing. So that was the time I was called to meet the security intelligence, and he was in the place to recruit me to do with them. And I refused to do that. And they said that you are going to do with us what I'm going to do with you, because I'm a student. I asked them. No matter. You will go to your university and try to see people who are against us, who are organizing themselves in order to criticize or oppose this regime, so you can report to us. No, I prefer to die than doing that. Then there was a woman sitting behind him, and she said that, why don't you torture him? Why don't you kill him? Why you are burying him? Then the other head of the security came in and he said that, how you are talking with him like normally, like it's not the place. This is not the place to talk with him like this. So just take him to the other investigation room and he will do that. And they brought a lot of papers. Then they said that you have to sign on this paper. Then I asked them to read. Let I read and let I understand what I'm going to sign. But they refused. No, you have to do. Then I refused. Then I was tortured. The man walked over me and he just pointed a gun on my head and even inserted a pistol in my mouth, and he said that I'm going to kill you. Then I said, kill me. Well, finally, due to the torture, I get fainted and I don't remember what I did. But finally, I saw myself in my cell in Sheraton. Then again, they called me to sign the paper. The same thing happened. But finally, I couldn't challenge. I couldn't say no because it's almost I was dying and nothing has left to say or to oppose what they have proposed. So I signed the paper, but I didn't know what the paper says. Then they said that you can go to your home now. That was the way I released from Maakalawi. But after Maakalawi, I even, okay, they said that you can continue your study. But after 2 weeks, I was arrested again. Or I read my poetry to the university students because it was the time when new or fresh students came to university, and the council of university has arranged the meeting and to welcome new students. Then I read my poetry to them. Then after 3 days, I was arrested. At the end of December 28, 29, 30, and 31st, then there was a conflict between the Oromo students and the federal police. We had asked the very minor questions, and the question was, there were 2 students and they disputed over watching TV, and they wanted to dismiss the Oromo and they don't want to punish the Tigrayan one. Then they asked them, no, this is not fair. This is political measure and we have to compromise. At least we can mediate these 2 guys. No. Because they wanted us to protest or to say against the decision, and finally they want to take their own action on the Oromo students. Then that was resulted for the detention of more than 500 Oromo students, and I got information that they proposed to kill me or retake me to Maakalawi. Then I fled to Addis from Adama. And finally, I fled to Sudan, where I spent almost 16 months in the refugee camp called Shagara. I was arrested 3 times in Shagara or in Sudan. Because in Sudan, there are a lot of Ethiopian securities, those who organize themselves and are working with the government, as well as doing their own job by cooperating with the undisciplined Sudanese securities. They went to deport me, but the UNHCR was very aware about my case, and they were trying to protect me by just changing place from one to another place. And finally, the UNHCR has accepted my case as a political refugee. Then I reported these things to Martin Shibi. Then Martin had involved it, and he has changed a lot of things. He had played a tremendous role to convince the Swedish embassy in Sudan. He contacted the migration board here in Sweden, and he even reached out to talk to the delegates, the Swedish delegates in Khartoum. Then finally, they issued the travel document within 10 days, and I ended up here in Sweden. Now I'm a refugee in Sweden. That's my story. Thank you for listening. If you allowed me, I want to read you. I know you don't understand, but I want to read in Afaan Oromo. Just listen to what Afaan Oromo does mean. Yaada yaaddoo ta'eef. I wrote this poem here in Malmo. I was sitting in the library and thinking a thing. That is what it is. Just thinking family, thinking the one I love, thinking my home country, all things. Then I wrote this. Yaaddoon nama yarsaa, foon nama raafitee qullaa nama bisaa, qallina qaamarra darbee qalbiis nama dabarsaa. Yaaddoon dhuma hin qabne kan egereef abdatan kan abdiin guutamanii achumaan immoo shimbii ta'an. Yaaddoon yaada dhugaa gaafa hin taane sammuuf suka. Inuma nama miidha qaama namaa nyaata abidda abdiidha utuu jedhan abjuu ta'ee mul'ata. Kanaaf nama miidhaa yaaddoon dhuma hin qabne kan garaa muranii gar dhibiitti hin ceene yookaan yaada dharraa bahanii kan tasa namaaf hin taane utuu yaadan cufa sila utuu yaadanii sila cufa argatanii namuu yaaddoon qabu yaadanis hin dhibamani. Yaaddoon yaada dhalaa yaannis yaaddoon guulaa kanaaf firee ta'ee namuu yaadan bulaa. Utuma yaadanii tarii godaananii yaadni nama nyaatus yaaddoon hin dhiisanii yaada yaaddoo ta'eef nama garaan badee jidduutti raa ta'eef. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caalaa. I know that you who are sitting here now does not sit here and is untouched by his story. I do believe that you feel what I used to feel when the first time I heard his story, and nowadays that I have heard other stories that are similar to his. I've heard so many, but I still feel the same. All of these stories are unique, but unfortunately they share way too many similarities of innocent people being jailed for using words as weapons for human rights. These people work for democracy, censorship to end, corruption to end. They give voices to jailed people. But for this they are called terrorists, because in Ethiopia there's an anti-terrorism legislation. And this allows the Ethiopian government to jail people who are innocent. And I also think that you who are sitting in here this evening are thinking, this is so horrible and I wish that I could do something about this. And maybe some of you are also thinking, it really is a shame that this is happening, but I can't do anything about this. Because that is just what I used to be thinking. So let me share your story. In 2014, it was like this. I have always, my entire life, felt that I wanted to do something for human rights, something for humanity. But I didn't know what, and I didn't know how. And most of all, I did not think that I could do something. But in 2014, I read the book that Caalaa mentioned, 438 Days, written by Martin and Johan, and it was about the experiences they had in Ethiopia and about people that they met in prison. One of these people was Wubshe. He's a journalist, and he was tortured, beaten for doing his job. And somehow I started to feel a connection with these people. You know, I always loved to express myself through creativity. I always loved to write, to draw, to photograph, work in Photoshop. And I started thinking, there they are, sure, very far away from here, thousands of miles. But they are jailed and tortured for doing what I didn't do here. There were so many things that I could do with these gifts, because expressing is a gift, but I didn't use it. And there they were. And I couldn't let this go after reading this book. I can even remember on what page some change happened within me. And it was the day when Johan came into his cell. It was in Maekelawi, and he met his cellmate for the first time. He was a young man, he was 28 years old, an Eritrean, and he was lying on the floor in the cell. He was covered by a dirty blanket, and their eyes met, and Johan could see that this person, he looks really sick. His face looks like it was grey, and his eyes was filled with fear, and he was crying. And this is when I first realized, more than ever, that it doesn't matter that I'm here and they are far away there, because we are all the same. And I would have felt just as devastated, just as alone, and just as afraid as this man felt if I was there, or as Caalaa felt. And this is where I would like to ask you a question. Does anyone at all in here use Facebook? Please raise your hand for me. Oh, there was a few. Does anyone in here use other social medias? Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, or something else? Raise your hands. A few more. Does anyone in here have a blog or a website that you used to write on? Use your hands. Then you have important tools which you can use to do something to spread information about human rights abuses. And I would like to ask you a question. What if, when you come home this evening, you will sit down by your computer or with your cell phone, and you will write, this evening I listened to Caalaa when he shared his story on a lecture, that he was jailed and tortured for writing poetry about human rights. And there are still so many in that situation. And we have to say something, we have to do something about this. Will that make a change? That is what I started doing. After I read the book, I felt that I had to do something about this. I had to at least say no when people are jailed who are innocent. So I created a Twitter account and I started tweeting. And I was just writing things like, journalism is not a crime and journalism is not terrorism. And I didn't even think that people were going to read my tweets. But one day I was scrolling through tweets of others, and I saw a tweet that sounded very weird. It said something like this. My hands are shaking. I cannot even properly write. My friends got arrested for being human. Taste those words. My friends got arrested for being human. Is that even possible? And at this point, I didn't know who this man was who tweeted this. I thought it was a joke. It sounded too crazy. But I started looking into this, and it turns out that this man was part of a blogging group from Ethiopia called the Zone 9 Bloggers, and 6 of his friends had been arrested together with 3 journalists in Ethiopia. And the reason this blogging group is named like this is because, as Caalaa mentioned, it's a prison there that the name is Kalite prison, and it is divided into zones. So there are 8 zones, and Zone 9 call themselves this way because the country in itself is like a 9th zone of this prison. Because even though you are on the outside of the prison, you're still not free in this country. So this group, they have written about human rights abuses that were performed by the Ethiopian government. And now they were arrested for doing this. And you know, I read this tweet and I started thinking, does people know about this? Does the human rights organizations know about this? Does the media know about this? Because it seemed like only people who knew these people in person were writing on social media. And now, even though I now knew about this case, it was really difficult for me to find information. Because we need to understand that in Ethiopia and in other countries that are repressed by their regimes and where independent media are not allowed, people use social media in a very different way from what we are using here. Many of us use Facebook like kind of like a diary or something. We write personal stuff that happens during the day. But they use those social media as an important way of, like an alternative media. So they spread news and things that are not allowed in the normal media. This is of course very, very, very dangerous, and many are jailed for doing this. But there's also a small problem by using social media in this way. And that is when I realized that on this day, the information is everywhere. I didn't know where to find it. It was very difficult to get like the full grasp of this case. So I started thinking, is there anything that I can do to help this? Can I use my gifts in any way? So I created this short, like a text. I started to summarizing all the information that I could find, made the short text, and I made a picture out of it in Photoshop, because as you know in Twitter, you're only allowed to use like 2 lines or something and then it's full. So I spread this text with a summarize, and then I left the computer for 30 minutes or so. And when I came back, that picture was everywhere. Everyone was spreading it. And very soon after, human rights organizations also wrote about the case of Zone 9 bloggers. And this is where I first realized that I had something to give to this area. So I started blogging and I started doing the same. I was checking cases, people who have been jailed, and I started to summarizing these and make the information easy to understand, easy to find. And I used social media a lot to spread it. And this is the point where exiled bloggers and journalists who had come to Sweden and other countries started contacting me. And one of them wanted to meet me. And I can still today remember how nervous I was when I was waiting for an exiled blogger on the central station in Stockholm. I don't know why I was this nervous, but it was so special for me. And I stand there and he came, and we went to a cafe, and he told me his story about how he was forced to flee because he had written about human rights. And you know, it is not every day you sit down with a completely new person and you find yourself crying 30 minutes into the conversation. And that is when my first idea of Untold Stories was born. And today I am a project manager of this social media, of this platform that is giving voice to people who have suffered human rights abuses in Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Egypt. The governments of these 3 countries in Africa are the worst jailers of journalists and bloggers. So, soon after this, the Somnad bloggers, they were released. And yet today we do not really know the reason. Probably it was because the last President Barack Obama visited the country at that time. They are still today, even though they are released, called back to court once in a while. They are being harassed, under surveillance. They are not being left alone. But they were released. And in October of 2016, I heard that one of the journalists that I have written so much about were coming to Stockholm to hold a seminar. So I knew that I wanted to go to a meeting because I had never met someone who used to be jailed and who I had written about. So I went to the seminar and I was going back, to take off my jacket in the closet. And then he suddenly approached me and he instantly recognized me. And he said, I will really want to tell you something. And he said, when I was jailed in Kilinto prison, visitors were coming to me, and they were over and over and over again saying that, there's a Swedish woman writing about you all the time on social media. And I said, what? And he said, yes, all of us knew your name. All of us knew about you, that you were writing about us, that you were telling the world about our cases. And that was not, I could almost barely believe him because the tweets that I have written in my living room here in Sweden have reached all the way into this high security prison in Ethiopia. That is amazing. And as it turns out, it was not the only thing that had gotten into this prison, because together with two other Somnad bloggers that was free, I had made a video, an animated video telling about their case, and we had spread it online. And he said, well, that video that you made, it was smuggled into prison and we saw it there. And I would like to try to give you an image of this prison, the Kilinto prison in Ethiopia. He said that it is divided just as Kilinto prison into zones. And unfortunately, he could not see the video, but his friends who were kept in another zone, they saw it. And in these zones, there are like big rooms, prison cells. But it's not like the kind of prison cells that we see in like American prison movies. It's big rooms with at least 100 people in each room. And the only personal space you have in here is your bed. But many people do not even have beds. They are forced to sleep directly on the floor. And he said, in this prison, it is so horrible, it is so dirty, there's no water, it's coming and going all the time. It smells so bad, it's so crowded. And he said that the sound level are so high because people are always talking. Imagine like 100 to 140 people in one room. But there's also another reason for this sound level, and that it is a TV in there that is always showing state propaganda. Propaganda from the Ethiopian government, and people are forced to see it. But it was also on this TV that they managed to see our video. And I asked him, can you please tell me how it felt to see this video in prison? And he said, it was absolutely mind-blowing. Because I have felt that our message, the message of the Somnad bloggers, that human rights abuses are wrong, have been communicated to the world. And it gave me so much hope to see this video. And when I was standing back there with Tesfalem, he wanted to say something to me. And this is something that I want each and every one of you to take personally. He said to me, And it gave me so much strength to know this. Because we need to understand that what these people fear the most is to be forgotten in prison. That people on the outside will stop talking, stop writing about them. That is their biggest fear. So I would like to ask you again, does anyone in here like to express themselves through writing? Please raise your hand. Through writing. Do we have any artists in here? People like to draw, or paint, or photograph? Do we have any students in here? Then all of you, and I can say all of you who are in here, you are important gifts that you can use to spread information about human rights. No matter what you have. Communicators, media workers, psychologists. You know, there are so many people who have these horrible, horrible, horrible experiences of torture or of war. They are coming to Sweden and they end up in asylum camps and they have no one to talk to. They are completely lonely. All they have is their thoughts, their memories. And imagine giving something to them, someone to talk to, someone to share the story with. There are so many things that can be done. In Sweden, the most well-known journalist, jail journalist, is Eritrean Dawit Isaak. He was jailed in 2001, and he's still jailed. Ethiopian journalist Eskinder Nega has been jailed since 2011. Temesgen Desalen since 2014, same with Zelalen Workagenyu. But there are so many names that we do not even know about, so many people who have risked so much to do something for human rights who are jailed. And I believe that it's our cause. We who are in this free country, we who are free to use our voices that others are jailed for, to say that this is wrong. Because throwing a word is like throwing a stone into water. Rings will spread. And you never know who is going to read what you are writing on social media. Because politicians, media workers, human rights organizations know that social media is a very important media to use for spreading information about human rights and the cases. So they always scan through this. And I can assure you that if you start writing about this, people will read your words and they will be valued. So if you can, and I know you can, give strength to those who are jailed. Because one day or another they will hear about you. And they will know that you sat there at home and you told the world about their cases. And I would like to ask you to do one thing for me. Can everyone please stand up? And now can everyone please do like this? Cross your hands like this. Now let me tell you this. If you were in Ethiopia right now and you did this, then you would have been thrown into jail. You would have been arrested. Just for doing this, can you imagine that? Because with this gesture, you show that you stand with solidarity with people who are jailed, because as you can see, it looks like your hands are chained. So let's today stand together with these people and show that abuses against human rights is wrong, and jailing people for using words as weapons for human rights is wrong. Thank you so much for coming here today. Thank you.
have any questions or want to talk to us afterwards, we have some information about Untold Stories and Amnesty as well, if you want to be active in some way. So just ask. They're sitting there, and I think they would like to talk if you have any sort of questions or anything you thought about the seminar. So thank you for coming as well.